What happens when one of Hollywood's most recognizable young stars joins a daytime talk show, and an unexpected difference of opinion turns an ordinary interview into the most talked-about television moment of the week? Make sure to subscribe to the Star Talks and like and comment for more talk show coverage. As the audience applauds, Hailee Steinfeld walks onto the set with a smile, greeting each panelist before taking her seat. The conversation begins with lighthearted questions about her latest projects, balancing music and acting, and the excitement of connecting with audiences through different creative outlets. Whoopi Goldberg smiles. You've managed to build a career across so many different areas. Does it ever feel overwhelming? Hailee laughs softly. Sometimes, but I'm grateful for every opportunity. I try to stay focused on the work instead of worrying too much about everything happening around it. The audience applauds. Joy Behar nods. That's probably easier said than done. It definitely is, Hailee replies. There are days when you have to remind yourself why you started. The discussion continues comfortably for several minutes. Sunny Hostin asks about balancing privacy with public attention, and Hailee explains that setting personal boundaries has become increasingly important. I've learned that not every opinion deserves a response, she says. Sometimes protecting your peace is the healthiest choice. Several audience members applaud again. Alyssa Farah Griffin leans forward. But isn't there another side to that? She asks. Public figures have enormous influence. Some people would argue that choosing not to respond can sometimes send a message of its own. Hailee nods thoughtfully. I understand why people feel that way. So where do you draw the line? Alyssa continues. Fans often expect celebrities to weigh in on cultural conversations. Do you think staying neutral is realistic? The audience quiets. Hailee answers carefully. I don't think it's about being neutral. I think it's about recognizing that every person has different expertise. Just because someone has a microphone doesn't automatically make them the best person to speak on every subject. A few audience members clap. Alyssa smiles politely. But millions of people listen to celebrities more than experts. Sometimes they do, Hailee replies. And that's exactly why I think people should be careful before speaking. There's pressure to react instantly, but thoughtful conversations usually take time. Whoopi nods. That's a fair point. Alyssa isn't finished. But isn't waiting sometimes viewed as avoiding responsibility? The audience senses the discussion becoming more serious. Hailee remains composed. I think responsibility also means knowing when you don't have all the answers. Joy raises an eyebrow. So you're saying celebrities should speak less? Hailee smiles. I'm saying everyone, including celebrities, should think more before speaking. The audience laughs. Joy chuckles. That's probably advice for all of us. The laughter eases some of the tension, but Alyssa follows up. I hear what you're saying, but there's also criticism that public figures benefit from public attention when it's positive and step away when conversations become uncomfortable. Hailee pauses for a moment. I understand that criticism. She continues calmly. But I also think people sometimes confuse access with entitlement. Support from fans is something I'm incredibly thankful for. That doesn't mean every personal thought belongs to the public. The audience applauds more loudly. Whoopi looks around the table. Interesting distinction. Alyssa nods. So where do you think accountability comes from? Hailee answers without hesitation. From honesty. What does that mean? It means if I genuinely have something meaningful to contribute, I'll say it. If I'm still learning, I'd rather admit that than pretend to have every answer. A few audience members clap again. Sunny smiles. There's something refreshing about hearing someone say they're still learning. Alyssa responds thoughtfully. I respect that, but some viewers would probably say silence can feel disappointing. Hailee nods again. And that's okay. People don't have to agree with every decision I make. The audience grows quiet. She adds, I've learned that trying to satisfy everyone usually means you're no longer being honest with yourself. A noticeable wave of applause moves through the studio. Alyssa smiles before offering one final observation. So confidence for you isn't convincing everyone. Hailee smiles warmly. No. She pauses just long enough for the audience to lean in. I think confidence is being willing to disagree respectfully without making someone else the villain. The audience breaks into sustained applause as the panel exchanges thoughtful looks, setting the stage for an even deeper discussion after the commercial break. The audience is still applauding as the show cuts to a commercial break. When the panel returns, the mood is noticeably more thoughtful than before. Whoopi welcomes everyone back with a smile. We're back with Hailee Steinfeld, and we were having an interesting conversation before the break about public expectations, accountability, and finding the balance between speaking up and taking time to think. The audience applauds again. Whoopi turns toward Hailee. I want to stay with this idea because I think it's something a lot of people, not just celebrities, deal with. Everybody has an opinion online now. Hailee nods. That's true. Social media has made conversations much more immediate. Sometimes that's wonderful because people can connect instantly. Other times it creates pressure to react before you've really processed something. Alyssa leans forward. Do you think that pressure has changed your career? In some ways, yes. How? I've become much more intentional about what I share. Earlier in my career, I probably felt like I needed to explain myself more often. Joy smiles. And now I've realized explanations don't always change people's minds. The audience laughs softly. Sunny joins in. That's true for everyone. Hailee smiles. I think we've all experienced that. Alyssa nods. But don't you worry that saying less allows other people to tell your story for you? Hailee thinks for a moment. Sometimes it does. So why accept that? Because trying to control every conversation about yourself becomes exhausting. A few audience members applaud. Whoopi nods. I think a lot of people can relate to that. Alyssa continues. But if someone misunderstands you publicly, isn't there value in correcting the record? Absolutely. So where's the line? Hailee answers calmly. I'll correct facts. I don't spend much energy correcting opinions. The audience lets out a quiet murmur of approval. Joy laughs. That's probably healthier. It took me a while to learn. Sunny asks another question. Did that lesson come from experience? Hailee smiles knowingly. I think every performer eventually realizes that criticism comes with the job. You can't let every headline define your day. The audience applauds. Alyssa listens carefully before responding. I understand that, but I also think public figures influence conversations whether they want to or not. I agree. So isn't there a responsibility that comes with that influence? There is. Alyssa raises an eyebrow. Then why not embrace it more often? Hailee answers carefully. Because responsibility isn't measured by how frequently you speak. It's measured by whether what you're saying is thoughtful and genuine. Several audience members clap. Joy looks toward Alyssa. I think that's an interesting distinction. Alyssa nods. It is. But some people would argue visibility creates obligation. Hailee smiles politely. And others would argue authenticity matters more than frequency. The audience reacts with another round of applause. Whoopi chuckles. Well, we're definitely having a conversation today. Everyone laughs. The atmosphere remains respectful even as the disagreement continues. Sunny turns to Hailee. Has there ever been a moment when you regretted speaking too quickly? Hailee nods. Of course. Everyone has moments they wish they'd handled differently. So what did you learn? That taking a few extra hours, or even a day, to think rarely hurts. Alyssa responds. But sometimes the public expects an immediate answer. Hailee nods again. I know. She pauses before continuing. I just don't think speed should matter more than accuracy. The audience applauds more loudly than before. Joy smiles. I don't think anyone can argue with accuracy. Alyssa laughs. No, probably not. She adds with a smile. I guess I'm pushing back because I think viewers want honesty in real time. Hailee answers just as warmly. And I think honesty sometimes includes saying, I need more time to understand this. The audience applauds again. Whoopi looks around the table. This has become less about celebrities and more about how all of us communicate. Sunny agrees. It really has. An audience member can be heard applauding enthusiastically. Alyssa looks at Hailee again. Can I ask something more personal? Of course. Do comments online still bother you? Hailee laughs softly. I'd be lying if I said they never did. The audience smiles. But I've learned something. What's that? The loudest opinions aren't always the most representative. Several people clap. She continues. If you spend all your time reading criticism, you'll eventually forget about the people quietly supporting you. The audience applauds warmly. Alyssa smiles. I actually think that's a valuable reminder. Hailee returns the smile. I think we all need reminders sometimes. Whoopi glances toward the audience. One thing I appreciate here is that people can disagree without talking over each other. The audience applauds. Joy jokes. Well, most of the time. Everyone laughs, including Hailee and Alyssa. The lighter moment eases the tension, But Alyssa has one more question before the segment ends. If there were one misconception about public figures that you could change, what would it be? Hailee takes a thoughtful breath. I'd probably say this. Confidence isn't having the perfect answer every time. It's being comfortable admitting you're still growing. The studio falls quiet for a moment before the audience responds with sustained applause. Whoopi smiles. That's a good place to pause. As the cameras begin to pull back for another commercial break, the panelists continue chatting quietly among themselves, with viewers left anticipating where the conversation might go when the show returns. As the show returns from another commercial break, the audience applauds once again. The atmosphere is still friendly, but it's clear everyone at the table knows the conversation has become the centerpiece of the episode. Whoopi smiles. We're back with Hailee Steinfeld, and I have to say, this has been one of those conversations where nobody is trying to win. Everybody's just trying to understand each other. The audience applauds. Hailee nods. I appreciate that. Those are usually the conversations that stay with people. Alyssa smiles. And hopefully the ones that actually accomplish something. I agree. Sunny leans forward. Hailee, you've talked a lot about listening before speaking. Do you think people have become less willing to listen? Hailee considers the question. I think people still want to listen. The problem is that everything moves so quickly now. Sometimes we respond before we've fully heard what someone is trying to say. Joy chuckles. So basically, patience is becoming a rare skill. The audience laughs. Maybe, Hailee replies with a smile. But it's still an important one. Alyssa joins in. I'll admit something. Everyone looks toward her. When we started this discussion, I thought we were going to disagree on almost everything. The audience reacts with light laughter. But I think we actually agree on more than I expected. Hailee smiles. I was thinking the same thing. Whoopi nods approvingly. That's usually what happens when people actually have a conversation instead of trading headlines. Several audience members applaud. Alyssa continues. I still believe public figures have responsibilities that come with influence. And I don't disagree with that, Hailee answers. You don't? No. Alyssa looks surprised. I think where we've differed is how that responsibility should look. The audience grows quiet. Hailee continues. I don't believe every meaningful contribution has to happen in front of cameras. Sometimes it's private. Sometimes it's through actions people never see. Sunny nods thoughtfully. That's an interesting point. Joy adds, we often assume that if something isn't posted online, it didn't happen. Hailee smiles. Exactly. The audience applauds. Alyssa asks another question. Do you ever worry that staying private allows people to fill in the blanks? I've accepted that they probably will. And you're comfortable with that? As comfortable as anyone can be. The audience laughs softly. Hailee continues. I've learned that if you spend all your energy correcting assumptions, you stop living your actual life. Several audience members clap. Whoopi smiles. That's wisdom a lot of people learn the hard way. The discussion shifts slightly as Sunny asks about younger audiences. Many of your fans are teenagers and young adults. What's the biggest message you hope they take from your career? Hailee answers without hesitation. That it's okay to keep growing. She pauses. People sometimes expect us to become one version of ourselves and stay there forever. Joy nods. But that's impossible. It is. Hailee continues. The person I was 5 years ago isn't the person I am today, and hopefully 5 years from now I'll have learned even more. The audience applauds warmly. Alyssa smiles. I don't think anyone could argue with personal growth. Whoopi laughs. Careful. Somebody online probably will. The audience bursts into laughter. Even Alyssa laughs. That's fair. The mood has noticeably softened. An audience member asks a question during the show's audience segment. My question is for both of you. How do you disagree with someone without making it personal? Whoopi points toward Hailee first. Hailee answers thoughtfully. I try to assume the other person isn't speaking in bad faith. The audience listens quietly. If I begin with the assumption that someone is trying to have an honest conversation, it's much easier to stay respectful, even when we disagree. Whoopi turns to Alyssa. What about you? I'd say curiosity. She smiles. I've found that asking one more question usually teaches me more than making one more statement. The audience applauds. Hailee nods. I like that. Alyssa smiles back. And I'll admit something else. What? I came into today's discussion expecting a sharper disagreement. Hailee laughs. I think some people watching probably expected that too. The audience laughs. Alyssa continues. But instead, we found areas where we challenged each other without trying to embarrass each other. Whoopi gestures toward both of them. That's how conversations are supposed to work. The audience applauds enthusiastically. Joy looks toward Hailee. If viewers remember one thing from today, what would you hope it is? Hailee thinks for a moment. I'd hope they remember that changing your mind isn't weakness. The audience grows quiet. She continues. Sometimes the strongest thing you can say is, I hadn't thought about it that way before. A loud round of applause fills the studio. Alyssa nods. I'll give you credit. Hailee smiles. For what? You've challenged several of my assumptions today. Hailee laughs softly. And you've challenged mine. The audience applauds again as Whoopi glances toward the camera. We've got just a little time left, and when we come back, we'll wrap up this conversation and hear how our audience is reacting to everything they've heard today. The applause continues as the show heads into its final commercial break, leaving viewers eager to hear the closing thoughts from everyone at the table. The show returns from its final commercial break to warm applause from the studio audience. Whoopi smiles as she looks around the table. Welcome back. We've had a thoughtful discussion today, and before we wrap up, I'd like everyone to leave viewers with one final thought. She turns to Hailee first. What would you want people watching at home to take away from today's conversation? Hailee smiles appreciatively. I'd say this: disagreement doesn't have to mean disrespect. It's possible to have different perspectives, ask difficult questions, and still leave with respect for one another. The audience applauds. Whoopi nods. I think that's an important reminder. Joy adds with a grin, especially these days. Laughter spreads through the studio. Sunny looks toward Alyssa. What about you? Alyssa smiles. I came into this conversation expecting a debate. What I found instead was a discussion. I still have my own perspective, but I also appreciate hearing someone explain theirs thoughtfully. The audience applauds again. Hailee nods. And I appreciate being challenged respectfully. Sometimes the best conversations are the ones where nobody changes their entire opinion, but everyone leaves understanding each other a little better. Several audience members clap. Whoopi looks toward the audience. I think that's something we could all use a little more of. The audience responds with sustained applause. As the segment comes to a close, the panelists stand, exchange smiles, and thank one another for the conversation. Hailee waves to the audience before greeting a few audience members near the front row as the credits begin to roll. In this scenario, viewers immediately begin discussing the episode online. Some praise Hailee's calm, measured responses, while others say Alyssa asked fair and challenging questions that kept the discussion engaging. Many comments focus on how the exchange remained respectful despite clear differences of opinion. Entertainment blogs and fan communities in this story describe the conversation as an example of a civil disagreement, highlighting moments where both participants acknowledged each other's points instead of trying to win the debate. The discussion continues across social media for days, with viewers sharing clips, quoting memorable lines, and debating which perspective they found more convincing. One theme appears repeatedly. Many people appreciate seeing a conversation where neither side resorts to personal attacks. Although opinions remain divided, most viewers in this scenario agree on one point. The discussion demonstrated that difficult conversations can remain thoughtful, respectful, and productive. As the episode fades out, the audience gives one final standing ovation before the cameras cut away. Thank you for watching this talk show story. What did you think of the discussion? Whose perspective made the stronger point? Share your opinion in the comments and subscribe to the Star Talks for more talk show stories and engaging celebrity-inspired debates created for entertainment purposes.